The storm clouds were rolling in over the old highway when everything changed. A group of bikers, tough, loud, weather-worn men with steel in their eyes and thunder in their engines, were pulling into a small roadside cafe, seeking nothing more than warmth and a break from the cold wind. But fate had other plans, because just as they were killing their engines, a tiny figure stumbled out from behind a rusted dumpster, mud on his face, tears on his cheeks, and a trembling voice that cracked under sheer terror. And in that fragile whisper that seemed too small for a world this cruel, the boy said the words that froze every biker where they stood. "They took my sister." In that moment, everything fell silent. The wind stopped, the road held its breath, and with the weight of those 4 words, a storm far stronger than the one above began brewing inside every man in leather. Before the story unfolds, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and people who choose courage when it matters most, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Hearts Hub. Your support helps spread stories that touch hearts and restore faith in humanity. The boy, no older than 8, looked like he had been running for hours. His clothes were torn, his knees were scraped, and there was a deep panic in his eyes that no child should ever carry. The bikers, members of a group known as the Iron Hawks, were used to roughness, to danger, to life's darker corners, but none of them were prepared for the trembling, broken plea in the child's voice. Their leader, a grizzled man named Marshall with a gray beard and a past full of things he rarely discussed, knelt beside the boy. He placed a steady hand on his shoulder, trying to offer warmth without overwhelming him. The boy flinched at first, then collapsed into Marshall's chest, sobbing as though his tiny heart had finally lost the strength to hold everything inside. Marshall picked him up gently and brought him inside the cafe. The bikers surrounded the boy not in intimidation but in protection. The warmth of the place, the smell of coffee and old wood, the soft murmurs of worried strangers, none of it could drown out the fear coursing through the child. The owner brought a blanket and warm milk. Someone else set a plate of fries in front of him. Slowly, he began to breathe normally again, though his eyes kept darting to the door as if afraid someone would follow him here. Through stutters and trembling words, the truth spilled out. The boy's name was Liam. He and his older sister Emily had been walking home after visiting a friend. A van stopped near them. 3 men jumped out. Emily pushed Liam into the bushes and told him to hide. She was dragged screaming into the van, kicking and clawing, but the men were stronger. Liam watched from the dark, frozen by fear and helplessness. After they were gone, he ran, and ran, and ran. He didn't know where else to go. He didn't know who else to trust. He had found the cafe by accident, stumbling through the cold, following the faint glow of the neon sign, as if led by some invisible force protecting what was left of his small world. The cafe went quiet. Not a sound except the soft hum of the old refrigerator. Marshall stood up slowly, his jaw clenching with a familiar fire. He had once been a father himself. He had known loss. He knew what it meant to see a child's innocence threatened by monsters who walked like men. Without saying a word, he turned to his crew. They didn't need instructions. They didn't need persuasion. They nodded, each one understanding the weight of the moment. Their patches might have labels. Their bikes might roar like thunder, but their hearts were human, and their moral compass was still very much alive. They moved quickly. One biker checked nearby traffic cameras. Another contacted local friends known for keeping an eye on suspicious activity. A third studied tire marks by the roadside. The Iron Hawks had once been known for rebellion and wild tempers, but years had softened them into a brotherhood that fought more for others than themselves. They tracked down the path of the van through deduction, intuition, and an instinct sharpened by hard years. Liam watched them work with wide eyes, sitting close to Marshall, finding safety in the man's presence. For the first time since Emily was taken, he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. The trails led them toward an abandoned warehouse at the edge of town, a place locals knew not to go. The kind of place where shadows swallowed the weak and evil hid behind broken walls. The bikers rode through the night with Liam bundled safely in the sidecar of Marshall's bike, his tiny hands gripping blankets as the cold wind whipped around them. The engines echoed through the lonely roads, forming a protective thunder that made the darkness seem less frightening. When they reached the warehouse, everything felt wrong. The doors were cracked open. Trash littered the ground, tire marks fresh enough to shine under the moonlight. Marshall parked the bikes quietly. The men spread out, each one moving with fierce purpose. They peeked through broken windows and listened carefully for any sign of life. And then, faintly, painfully, a sound cut through the air, a tiny, muffled cry. Liam's head snapped toward the noise, eyes widening. He whispered her name, Emily. The Iron Hawks didn't wait a second. They kicked indoors. They stormed through the halls. They moved with a mixture of rage and precision that only men who have seen too much can truly possess. The kidnappers tried to run, but running from men like the Hawks was pointless. Within seconds, the bikers overpowered them. No weapons needed, just raw strength, fury, and the unbreakable will to protect a child's innocence. One of the bikers found Emily tied to a chair, a filthy rag over her mouth and fear carved into her shaking body. She looked weak, terrified, but alive. When she saw Marshall carrying her brother into the room, her entire face crumbled with relief. Liam broke free from Marshall's arms, sprinted to Emily, and threw himself into her embrace. She wept into his hair. He clung to her as if letting go would break the world all over again. The bikers stood back, letting the siblings have their moment. Some of the men looked away, blinking hard. Others clenched their fists, fighting the lingering anger inside them. Emily's voice was barely a whisper as she thanked them over and over. Marshall knelt beside her, telling her that she was safe now, that nobody would hurt her again. She looked at him with a gratitude so deep it felt like a prayer. They escorted the children back to town, refusing to leave their side until the police arrived and the kidnappers were arrested. Officers questioned the bikers, shocked by how quickly they had tracked down the criminals. But Marshall only shrugged and said something simple, something that stuck with every witness that night. Heroes weren't born from perfection. They were born from moments where the heart refused to stay silent. Days later, the Iron Hawks received a visit from Liam, Emily, and their grieving but grateful mother. She brought home, made food, still warm, and hugged every biker with tears in her eyes. She explained how she had feared the worst, how the world had always seemed too cruel, too dark. But seeing these men, these rugged strangers, fight for her children had restored something she had thought she'd lost forever: belief in humanity. Marshall, usually stoic, felt something shift inside him. He'd gone through life believing he was too broken to save anyone anymore. But seeing Liam smiling, Emily healing, and their mother thanking him with trembling sincerity, made him realize that his past didn't define him. The present did. The choices he made now did. And he chose to be the kind of man who ran toward cries for help, not away from them. As weeks passed, Liam began to see the Iron Hawks as more than rescuers. They became protectors, friends, almost family. Emily, once scared of every shadow, now carried more courage in her eyes. She said she wanted to help other children one day, to make the world safer the way the Hawks had made it safe for her. Marshall promised her she would. He promised her she would grow strong again, and he meant it. Because kindness, real kindness, isn't weakness. It's the courage to act when acting feels impossible. It's the willingness to step into darkness so someone else can walk into the light. And sometimes it comes from the people society misunderstands the most. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Hearts Hub. Your engagement helps these emotional stories reach more people who need hope, compassion, and courage in their lives. Special request: before you go, comment "Kindness still lives" to keep the message alive.